finally got your first leadership gig, loving the new role, but feeling the pressure of your new responsibilities and all that expectation to perform? Well, don't worry, you're not alone. Crossing the chasm from a technical role to leadership, from doing stuff to managing and leading people, is the toughest challenge any leader must make. Welcome to the Human Edge Show, the podcast dedicated to help you do just that, successfully cross the doing to leading chasm. Campbell Such here, Chief Chasm Crossing Guide. I've made all the mistakes so you don't have to. I want to help you learn those lessons much more easily by sharing my experiences and talking with brilliant people who have already figured it out. You'll get great actionable tips, strategies, and techniques to make the transition so much easier and faster for you. Now let's get to it. Welcome to another episode of the Human Edge Show. I'm Campbell Such, and I'm really pleased to have Paul Stevens on the show with me today. Paul, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Campbell. Very nice introduction. I'm pleased to be here.
Paul loves talking with people and helping them to solve their problems has been what Paul's most enjoyed about every role he's ever had. Delivery and program management are the tracks he's followed and bring him the most satisfaction. While most of the last 15 years have been project and program focused, his talents and passion are around people, working with stakeholders and coaching them on their roles in the art of the possible, while working with delivery teams to help them to understand the why and to empower them to bring about the best results are the things that Paul loves and really loves to focus on. So just to kick off, Paul, what's one thing that most people wouldn't know about you?
So a lot of people probably wouldn't know that I used to be a part-time musician. I've led and played bass in a couple of bands over the years, and done a spot of songwriting as well. In fact, it was my desire when I was younger to be another Sting. But, you know, I wasn't as talented as that gentleman. So here I am talking to you about my life in the world of technology.
So Sting, that sounds like the Police. Is there a particular Police track that you'd pick as being your all-time favourite?
So I'm more Sting than Police. I mean, I've got a good collection of Police music, and probably my go-to album would be Mercury Falling, which is probably not one of his better or well-known albums, but I saw him tour that album, and so the songs on that album, remind me of that period.
Right. Wow. Songwriter. Didn't know that either. So great to know.
Yes.
So Paul, just thinking back on some of the earlier parts of your career, what were the first steps that you took into leadership, and how did you feel when you took on that first role? What was your sense of the challenges that you had and the things that might have made life easier or better for you?
Yeah, look, that's quite interesting. My first leadership role was with Air New Zealand many years ago. I'd been pitching to move up the ladder, and you know, it was around the time of when the Ansett Air New Zealand debacle happened, when we disintegrated, and I was felt quite lucky to have a job, and an opportunity came up, and I put my hand up. And I remember that the guy that I was reporting to was very hands off on you've got the role, now kind of get on with it. And being a young and cocky sort of a guy, I thought that I had I had it all figured out, and I thought I was a nice guy, and all the rest of it. And I remember the first team meeting. So, I diligently put an invite in the calendar for everybody, brought them all together. I had an agenda, I was taking minutes and all that sort of stuff. And I couldn't understand why there was no energy in the room. They were very almost despondent. And I couldn't figure it out. Anyway, I took one of the guys aside afterwards, after the meeting, and I said to him, what did I do wrong? I don't feel like there was a lot of energy in the room. And he said, well, it's the worst day of the week that you could call a meeting. You're the manager. We felt, obligated, obliged to attend the meeting, but we didn't really want to be there because we had other things that we needed to do. So it was great insight into, for me, and I guess it's helped me. It's one of those lessons that's helped me, in my leadership roles going forward, that you don't assume anything. And in that particular situation, I actually handed it back to them and said, okay, what is the best day and time of the week to meet? What sort of things do you want to discuss? There's some things that are non-negotiable that I do want to discuss, but what sort of things are important to you? And I actually introduced a revolving chair as well, so it wasn't just about me. And in that particular instance, it worked really well, and I got good engagement. It was, it would be my first memory of a leadership lesson.
Yeah, wow, that's it was great that you were prepared to reach out and to ask for some input and some feedback. There's a lot of people that wouldn't be prepared to put their hand up and might have gone away and scratched their heads and not necessarily learned the lesson. And not only were you prepared to ask for the feedback, but most importantly, you acted on it, listened and acted on it, and implemented some changes, which is, I suspect that boded very well for your ongoing success as a leader.
Yeah, look, I think so. I learned a very valuable lesson, and I've applied it as I've gone forward. In slightly different ways, but that would be the pearler for me.
Yeah. So that was a big lesson you learned early. What would you looking back on the roles that you've had and the times that you've moved into leadership and observing other leaders around you and the success or the challenges that they've had, what do you think would be some of the biggest mistakes new leaders make when they step into those new roles?
So for me, observing other people, particularly around where people have come from a technology background, and being so-called experts in their fields, it's very, very hard to let go of some of that stuff. I made a decision in my career quite early on that I was more interested in the business side of things and the people side of things. I mean, I still obviously I've worked in technology for a while, so I'm not stupid. But I watching other folk and how they they have to learn to read the room, and people don't, typically with a leader, and within technology, they have a bunch of IP within the room, and they might not necessarily have the best ideas, but because they are the leader, sometimes you might not get the best result or the best information out of meeting with those folk that you might ordinarily get if you were more encouraging of them to take, or encourage them to use their skills in the room. My attitude when I walk into the room, I don't say it all the time, but it is something that I wear, is I'm not the expert in the room. I'm there to guide the conversation. I'm there to help to get an outcome, but I'm interested in what other folk have to say, because many times I've been astounded by the knowledge from people in the team, and I like to encourage that. Yeah.
Well, so in terms of, if you're not the smartest person in the room, and knowing you the way I do, I think you're being very humble about your skills and capabilities, Paul. But what are your techniques, and what do you do to encourage the knowledge to come out of the other people in the room with you? How do you get that to happen? What's the process you use?
Yeah, look, it varies from meeting to meeting, and the different people that you have in the room. So if you're not getting a lot of engagement, what I will do is I will ask some pointed questions or some leading questions, and I might engage with somebody individually in the room and ask their opinion. If you know your team well enough, who is going to give you a response, and who's going to be quiet in the room. And when I don't know people very well, I'm trying to encourage conversation, again, leading questions, and I might ask an individual, because they might not have said much in the meeting. And some people don't like that, and they feel a bit challenged that they're kind of being pointed out. But they can say, no, I've got nothing to add. But I think you need to give them the opportunity. So I try to engage people. I like to use humor in my to relax people. I'm not great at telling jokes, but I will make comments that hopefully people find amusing, to kind of relax people, because if you're going to be there for a meeting, you might as well enjoy yourself. I certainly like to enjoy myself. So so humor is probably one of the things I'll use as well.
Yep. Wow. Okay. So in terms of bringing all that together, what advice would you give to a new leader who's climbed the hill, if you like, of technical expertise and at or near the peak of their technical career, now looking at having made that decision to go into leadership and management as opposed to continue with their technical path, and having to cross that, what I believe is make the biggest transition in any leader's career, which is crossing that chasm from doing stuff to leading and managing people. What advice would you give to a new leader to get started on that next hill, if you like, in their career, to climb that as quickly as possible?
Yeah, so coming back to my first example, where in my first leadership role, I didn't get a lot of support from my leader. So what I would do is I would encourage people to talk to other leaders, talk to them about their journeys, what they found has worked for them. And that's probably one of the key things. If there's not available within your organization, look within your network, people you trust, and just ask. And I guess those people that know you a little bit better, and depending on the relationship, obviously, you would get that I'm quite an open sort of a guy, so my relationships are quite, with my close friends are quite authentic, and and people are quite honest with me. So reach out to people who you believe can be honest with you, to talk to you about how they see you performing. And also, coming back to my first comment, seek guidance is probably not the right word, but seek input from the people that you're leading, and ask them about. So one of the things that I do when I go into a new role, and I'm introducing myself to a new team, is that I will talk to them about me, and what makes me tick. Not in depth, but hey, I'm a family guy. I'm interested in music, blah blah blah. I try and bring some personality into play. And I will also tell them a little bit about what my management style is, and some expectations from them in terms of what I'd like to see coming back. And I think the other thing that I quite often say is that some people are going to really enjoy my leadership style, and some of you aren't. And I can't help that. That is just, this is just who I am. But what I will hopefully bring to the table is that, honesty and transparency where I can. And if people take that approach, I've probably diverged a little bit off the question, but hopefully you're kind of getting a sense of, the things that I've learned on my journey, and I'm keen to, to help, other people on that journey too. And a bit of a plug, anybody listening to this, feel free if they don't have anybody in their network, feel free to contact me as well. I'm happy to share my experiences if that's of value to, to your viewers.
Well, that's a great offer, Paul. Thanks very much. And I'd encourage anyone that's looking for some input, some authentic input, some honest input from outside, helping to uncover some of the blind spots that we all have. Reach out to Paul. He's a wealth of knowledge and got great experience.
It can be quite lonely, Campbell, being a leader, and also, one of the things, you and I briefly touched on in the past is imposter syndrome, and it's real. And, people think, what the hell am I doing here? And there is fear and anxiety, and, particularly in the early days. And I just encourage people to seek some guidance. You can't know. Like me, cocky guy, thought that this management stuff is a breeze. It's not. And it's like anything. If you're a technologist, you go and do a course on learning that technology, or you take guidance from somebody. It's the same thing with leadership. Look at the sort of things that are available to you, either within your organization or externally. And look, most organizations would support that as well. If they haven't got the internal infrastructure to support it, as part of you, moving into leadership, ask for that. Hey, this is going to be my first leadership role. What is available to me? Do we have any training budget for that sort of stuff? If you don't ask, you're not going to get, right.
Yeah, that's right. One of the big challenges with a lot of new leaders is their manager or the leader that hired them into that role then has their own life that they have to live. They have multiple other direct reports, projects they have to deliver or have delivered, KPIs, other senior managers that they work with in their teams, and all the pressure of getting their job done and not enough hours in the day to get everything done. Yeah. And so I hear the story so many times of, similar to perhaps your first leadership role was, I just got told to get on with it and work it out, as opposed to having someone who helped you and supported you and guided and mentored and coached you through learning some of those things that you otherwise would have stubbed your toe or eased you into the shallow end, but instead you went into the deep end. So looking back on your career, is there anyone that stands out, or are there any leaders that stand out as being exceptionally good that you've dealt with, and what are the things that they did that helped you succeed or improve in ways that you might not have otherwise expected to?
Yeah, look, there's been a few on my journey. I remember when I picked up my first contracting job, I had worked at Air New Zealand for about 10 years, and I came out and with a bunch of cash on the table because I, went through that redundancy process. But I'd actually managed it so I could do that to give me some freedom to try something else. And I remember doing a little bit of networking and talking to a few people, and I got a role working at Vodafone. It was my first contracting gig. And I sat and I did it through another company, so I was working for them at their client. And I went and met this guy. We talked a little bit about it was a delivery deployment management or delivery manager. I can't remember. Anyway, we had a bit of a conversation about it, and he said, "Oh yeah, that sounds about right." Next day, we went down to Vodafone. I met the stakeholder, who was the program manager, and the next day I had the contract and I started. And it was fine. I knew the things that I needed to deliver, and I was quite hungry to kind of to get my stripes. And so I was working for a project manager, and then this program manager was above that. The project manager went away on some sort of leave, and he never came back. And so the program manager asked me, he said, "Oh, well, will you take over as the project manager?" And I went, "Eek." I said, this would be the first time that I've officially got the title project manager. And he said, "Don't worry, I'll help you." And he did. He took me under his wing. He was quite patient with me. I made a few mistakes, and he guided me through that. And I remember we had to do a presentation to the steering committee, and it was senior leadership team. And I had my PowerPoint pack in front of me, and there was a couple of things. And we were sitting there, and I was a little bit stressed, because I hadn't done it before. And he was just really calming. He said, don't worry. He said, you're not going to die here. If you make a mistake, you make a mistake. I'll be there as well. And, I'll pick up the pieces. But he said, just go for it. Enjoy it. And the enjoyment bit was kind of a bit freaky. But you know what? After I'd done it, I was quite buzzed. And he had given me the confidence and the support that I needed. He would be a standout for me. And more recently, I was working for a guy in a project management office. We were trying to establish a PMO, although we weren't calling it that because it had some negative connotations for that company. And again, it was a guy that he knew his stuff really well. I had some skills to help to support him, but I also needed to step up too. And he was just very supportive, sharing his knowledge, giving me some guidance on where I could, self-learn. It ended up being a really enjoyable assignment, and we ended up being really good friends out of it as well.
Wow. I'm getting a fairly, some commonality across both of those people the leaders that you had that have stood out as being especially good for you. The key for me is around providing an environment where you were encouraged and supported, and perhaps most importantly, given the comfort to know that if you made a mistake, it wasn't going to be the end of the world, and that knowledge that, hey, that was okay, then drop the stress levels. And one of the things around the way the human brain works is when we're stressed, it's really hard to focus on the bigger picture. All we want to do is be safe and get away from whatever it is, that saber-toothed tiger that our brain thinks is still coming up. Whereas when we haven't got the saber-toothed tiger chasing us, which is the stress reaction we get today with all the other things that go on, is that then the picture expands and you get a bigger sense of things, and you can go on and create and grow and make things happen in a way with ideas and thoughts and epiphanies that may not otherwise come to you. So I think that's a biggie for me for leaders of leaders in what they can do to help those new leaders grow and function far better in their roles, is to provide that environment that allows them to know you've got their back, but if things go wrong, you're there to help them, and it's not the end of the world. And I think it builds a culture that then flows down through the organization.
Yeah, look, it's hard to establish trust in teams. But man, is it powerful once you've got it. Look, I would much rather, have people on my team who've got attitude and aptitude, because you can teach all the other stuff, right? I'd rather get an 80% technical guy, but had the attitude and the hunger to go for it, than, the arrogant guy that's got 100% who can, really, really disrupt the team. Yeah. And it's hard to figure that stuff out sometimes. It's not an exact art when it comes to people and personalities. And when you're doing that interviewing and you're bringing somebody into the team, it's a big call to bring somebody new into the team, because it's going to disrupt and it's going to have it's going to be different. So it's always interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting that whole idea about how you hire, and one of the sort of the tenets of the past has been, hire for skills and bring the skills in. But actually, when you hire for skills, when you look at the stats, the reason people tend to move on or be moved on isn't for the lack of skills; it's for their inability to get on in the team.
Yeah.
So there's two things here. One is when you're hiring, it's the piece around having the attitude and the aptitude right, and the skill level good enough. Because let's face it, in 5 years' time, we're going to have to learn new stuff anyway. So whatever we know today, we're going to have to learn new stuff. And then the other one is when you come into a team, and perhaps we could just talk about this a little bit. And you were saying earlier about how important it was to understand how the different members of the team work and who you can call out for help and support or input in a meeting. What's your process for getting to know the members of your team? Is it around their technical capability, or is there more to it in a broader picture that helps you then meld and build a team and understand them better?
Yeah, look, it's not something that kind of happens overnight. It takes a bit of time because quite often, you don't, if you go into a new organization, it's probably a little bit different if you've been promoted, because you probably know a little bit about the personalities and the culture and what's going on. But if you're going into a new organization, it takes a while for, the people to show themselves. Typically when you go in and you're their manager, they're trying to show the best possible light. For various reasons. They may be really incompetent and they don't want you to know. It could be that, that they are looking for their next opportunity and they want your support. A myriad, and I probably kind of, focused a little bit on the negative side, which I didn't really mean to do. So yeah, it takes a bit of time. And what I do is, so, when I spoke earlier, I will bring the team together. I will introduce myself, a little bit about me, the humanistic side of me, my style, et cetera, and then I like to, to establish some one-on-one with people, so you can get to know them, understand, so initial meetings will be, tell me about your journey, how did you get here, what are you interested in, and you try to learn more about them to understand what support they're going to need and what sort of training, because all that sort of stuff. Who are the ones that are going to be the brilliant people, but they're only going to be there for a short period of time because they're just coming through. You need to kind of figure that out and how you harness that for the period of time that they're there. And then the plotters, who have, and again, I'm kind of probably using negative connotations here, I apologize, but people who are quite happy just to, to do their job. So how do you harness the energy out of them? And then it's kind of putting the jigsaw together, because then they have to come together as a kind of a team. And look, it's been different at different organizations. Some, like to go and play pool and go and have a few beers, and that's, to do something social. Some don't. So, you try and do things, within the day. I've had a reasonable amount of success with some, team building exercises, have been bringing people in externally and running some sessions to try and, get the best out of people. It just depends. It's not kind of one size fits all. I remember the conversation that you and I had very recently about, the psychoanalysis stuff. What you talked about was, was right out there. It was on another level. But, I found that, just sometimes doing some of that, Myers-Briggs stuff and things like that can help, with trying to, figure out, okay, that's why they are the way they are. And, sometimes, that line between extrovert and introvert is sometimes a little bit difficult to kind of, if you're close to the line, to figure out. But, again, this is just one of many, many tools. It's not, the only answer, but, that can help you as well in terms of figuring out why, people react a certain way. So I've probably given you a whole heap of stuff there to kind of digest. Apologies. It's not a one size fits all for me. I will go and I will try and, as best I can, assess what's going on, what the personalities are like, and how I'm going to kind of try and bring them together as a cohesive team. Yeah. And the other thing is, I don't always get it right. And it's a bit like the hiring thing as well. You get that slice of time, you get to see their CV, you interview them, 2 or 3 times, and you're taking a punt.
Yeah, that's right. Every time it's a punt, and you don't really know how someone's going to be until they actually get into the role and start doing things. And sometimes they're exactly what you think. Other times they're way better than you thought they were going to be, and other times they're, oh no, oh dear.
Yeah, what am I going to do?
What am I going to do?
How do I get out of this?
Yeah. Look, you've given us. There was a great menu of things that you've tried there that listeners can take from this and think about some of the things they might want to apply and try. The key for me there was getting to know the key kind of piece that sits underneath it all is getting to know the team members, your direct reports as people, so that you can help fit a jigsaw puzzle together to help the team work really well to then perform and at a high, the highest possible level to deliver really well. So that's great stuff, Paul. Really good. Thank you.
That's right.
Look, just before we wrap up, I wondered, is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should, or any last comments that you'd like to make that just to wrap things up?
No, look, I don't think so. I just was going to reiterate that, if any of the viewers have found, this useful and would like to have a conversation, I encourage people to be in touch. I enjoy helping people succeed. And, going back to my bio at the beginning, I am a people person. So I'm not saying that idly. It is a genuine offer.
Well, that's a fantastic offer. Thanks, Paul, and we'll put some contact details for you in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, that's been outstanding. Thank you very much. Really appreciate all of your insight and engagement and great suggestions and thoughts. Been great talking, and look forward to having you back on the show again sometime. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Campbell.
Cheers, Paul.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening. If you have a friend or a colleague who would benefit from this episode, please pass the word along. If you have a friend or a colleague who would not benefit, but you haven't been in touch with them for a while, give them a call. iTunes reviews are great to get the word out and to help me create the show that's most useful for you. And if you're frustrated or having challenges or would like some help, guidance, assistance with your first leadership role, then check out integrationcatalyst.com in the link in the podcast notes below. Or pass this on to your boss to nudge them to get you the help you really need to cross the doing to managing chasm and get you powered up on your leadership and management journey. Oh, and if you want to make sure you don't miss an episode, hit subscribe. Until next time.